the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is part 2 on the players of Guinea, the final selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome back to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. We're back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 African Cup. This episode deals with the final selections of Guinea. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years, but we have considered a few other factors as well. In fact, we ran out of time to do part 2, this part, for some of the teams of the African Cup. So today we're going back to review that, to complete the collection, as it were. So the tournament has been played by this point, but we're going to take the perspective of just before the tournament here, as if we were doing the mediacast when we intended to. So this mediacast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is some preliminary information, including a look at games played after we did part 1. That'll be the November games and the friendly just prior to the tournament. Section 2 is the main part of the mediacast, a review of the preliminary and final roster that was released, which we'll compare to the list that we compiled in part 1. And in section 3, we will summarize, reviewing surprise selections and non-selections, as well as new players, and also updating our injuries, Guinea having quite a few to deal with there. So we'll end with a revised version of our Spotlight review. That's our predictions on who we think is going to be starting. All right, let's jump right into section 1. And here we take a look at the squad details. So they were allowed to bring 27 players. That was a decision in mid-December that raised it from 23 to 27. However, Guinea just brought 25 players, so that's all we're going to see on the final squad. They did have a 49-man preliminary squad, which means they would have to cut, or they cut 24 players from that squad. Many of those on the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut, were actually in our possible but unlikely category, or in our seemingly off the squad category. They were in our soccer files, but we didn't mention those in part 1, so as to not complicate the matter. However, since they and some new players did make the squad, we're going to mention them by name only. We won't give biographical information, because they're obviously still part of the picture to some degree, and specifically because they might turn up in the future when we do the Guinea team for the 2025 African Cup. Okay, let's go on to the games they played, or the games we'll be looking at. So they had 2 World Cup qualifiers in November. We're not particularly interested in the results. It was Botswana and Uganda, but just out of curiosity, if you have. Botswana was a loss and Uganda was a win. And then they had 1 pre-tournament friendly in January before the tournament. That was arranged with Nigeria, and they won that game. But we're more interested in the lineups, who is playing in that game, and hopefully that'll give us an indication of who will play in the cup. Okay, so business is complete for section 1. Let's go on to section 2. This is the main part of the mediacast, and we're looking at the list that we compiled in part 1. And we're going to tell you who made it and who didn't. So let's begin with the manager here, Kaba Diawara. We'll consider him as having been selected for the final squad. No kind of firings just before the tournament here. And on we go to the goalkeeper. So we had a definite candidate in Ibrahim Kone, a likely candidate in Musa Kamara, and 3 possible candidates in Ali Keita, Lassana Diakabi, and Mori Keita. So we expect them to bring 3. Let's take a look. No surprise, our definite candidate Ibrahim Kone was selected. Also the likely candidate Musa Kamara selected, and they went with experience here for the possible candidate. Ali Keita was selected. However, the other two, Lassana Diakabi and Mori Keita, just selected for the preliminary squad there, but not making the final cut. Okay, that is it. And we're going to look at the games in November and the January game to see who was selected to start. And it was Ibrahim Kone in all 3 of them, actually. So we had thought he would be the starter, and it certainly seems that way. Okay, on to defenders. We have central defenders we're going to look at first. We have 3 in the definite category. That was Mohamed Ali Kamara, Seydou Sow, and Mukhtar Diakabi. And then no players in the likely section, but 4 players in the possible section. The first one is Ibrahima Sori Conte III, Julian Janvier, Abdul Rahman Barry, and Nabi Uter. And then we had one player, Usman Kante, as a possible but unlikely, who we left on the list because we thought he might factor in. Let's take a look and see who was selected. So we have Mohamed Ali Kamara selected for the final squad. Seydou Sow also selected for the final squad, and Mukhtar Diakabi. So all 3 of our definite candidates there making it to the final squad. They usually bring 5 or 6, so we don't expect all our possible names to appear. In fact, the first one, Ibrahima Sori Conte, not even selected for the preliminary squad there. A bit of a surprise because he was a starter in the 2021 African Cup. Next, we have Julian Janvier, who was selected for the Cup. And then the other 2 candidates made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. That's Abdurrahman Barry and Nabi Uler. Both of those only making the preliminary squad. Usman Kante, our possible but unlikely candidate, not selected not selected even for the preliminary squad. We do have 2 new candidates. They only made it to the preliminary squad, but we'll put them on the list in case they come into the picture in the future, both of them being quite young. The first one is Madiou Keita, and the second one, Mohamed Suma. So both of those we may be seeing further down the road. Let's look at the games and see who was selected. So in the first game against Botswana, it's a 4-3-3 formation. So 2 central defenders, and it was Janvier and Sow, both of those selected. So Janvier, a bit of a surprise there because he was just one of our possible candidates, and it was the same pairing in the Uganda game. So Julian Janvier becoming kind of moving up the list in our consideration of starters. In fact, he started the January game as well, but this time it was alongside Mukhtar Diakabi. So Janvier getting all 3 of the games as a starter. So we will come to that when we look at the spotlight review and predict our starters. Let's move on though to left backs. And we had a definite candidate in Isiaga Silla. Here too, no likely candidate or no candidate in the likely category, and a possible candidate in Sekou Silla, and possible but unlikely was Pa Konate. So let's see who made it. Isiaga Silla, our definite candidate, was selected, and Sekou Silla also selected. So those 2 candidates. Pa Konate not even making the preliminary squad there. let's take a quick look at the games and see who it was. In the first game, it was Sekou Silla, actually, our possible candidate as a starter. And that's true in the second game as well. In the third game, the graphic I have just says Silla, which doesn't help us because both of those players are named Silla. But it turns out that it's Sekou Silla again in all three games. So now we will probably be predicting him as the starter there. Over to the right back position, a definite candidate in Antoine Conte, a likely candidate in Dembo Silla, and a possible candidate in Ibrahim Diakite. And Antoine Conte, our definite candidate, was selected. Dembo Silla, the likely candidate, only for the preliminary squad, so he got cut. So sadly for Dembo Silla, but perhaps lucky for us that we don't have another Silla to confuse issues. Ibrahim Diakite, the possible candidate, was selected. So two right backs there, as we would expect. And let's take a look at the games to see who played. It was actually Ulare, one of the central defenders, playing in the first game. We saw that he didn't actually make the final squad. In the second game, it was Antoine Conte, so our definite candidate. And in the friendly against Nigeria in January, Conte again. So he'll probably be our predicted starter in the Spotlight review. Okay, no new candidates among the left or right back, so we go on to the midfield, and we begin with defensive midfielders. And we had a definite candidate in Amadou Diawara, a likely candidate in Mori Konate, and a possible candidate in Abdoulaye Toure. We actually had three candidates in the level below that, but I'll only mention them if they made at least a preliminary squad. So let's take a look and see who did make it. Amadou Diawara, our definite candidate, was selected for the final squad. Mori Konate, the likely candidate, and Abdoulaye Toure, the possible candidate. All three of those selected. Among the two possible but unlikely candidates we had, only Ibrahim Cisse was selected, and at the only for the preliminary squad at that. The other one, Fode Camara, not selected at all, and nor was the seemingly off the squad Ibrahima Camara. Neither of those two making the preliminary squad even. Before we look at who played in the positions, we're going to look at our candidates for central midfielder, and we begin with Naby Keita. He is the captain of the team as a definite candidate, and we also have Ilek Moriba. I have been saying his name wrong. I heard an announcer say it back in the 2021 Cup, pronouncing it Ilek. So I'll go with that, even though I rail at the final X not being pronounced, partly because I kind of like that. But anyway, we'll go with Ilek Moriba. So he and Naby Keita, both definite candidates on our list. A likely candidate was Seydouba Cisse, and we had a possible candidate in Amadou Keita. Here too, we had two players at the possible but unlikely level. We'll mention them if they make, or we'll mention it as we go through. Naby Keita, no surprise, selected for the squad, as was Ilek Moriba, which is absolutely no surprise. Likely candidate, Seydouba Cisse, was selected for the final squad also. However, Amadou Keita, the possible candidate, only made the preliminary squad, as did the first of our possible but unlikely candidates, Mamadou Kane. But Madi Camara, also possible but unlikely, not making the preliminary squad even. All right, so those are our candidates. I'll repeat, 3 defensive midfielders, 3 central midfielders, and that is about the number we expect. We have Amadou Diawara Elek Moriba and Naby Keita as definite candidates. We had them, and Mori Konate and Seydou Cissé are two likely candidates, and one possible candidate, Abdoulaye Touré, making the squad. We have no new candidates coming up here, so let's look at the games. So in game one against Botswana, there they had a 4-3-3 formation, so three central midfielders there, and it was Diawara, our definite candidate, Amadou Diawara, with Abdoulaye Touré and Cissé, Seydou Cissé there. So actually only one of our three definite candidates appearing there. In the second game against Uganda, they switched to a 4-2-3-1 formation, so just the two central defenders, actually defensive midfielders, central defenders, what am I talking about? The two defensive midfielders. Here too, Abdoulaye Touré, so making a bid, yes, Abdoulaye Touré making a bid, even though we had him as just a possible candidate, and Diawara kind of a staple there. We also here have Elek Moriba playing as a central attacking midfielder, so we'll come back to that a bit later on. In the third game, just before the tournament against Nigeria, we have another change of formation, a 4-1-2-3 it looks like, and it is Konate, Mori Konate playing in the center here, and Kamara and Cissé, Seydou Cissé there. Okay, let's move on to left and right midfielders. We actually had no candidates, so we said in part one that it's mostly hang on, we do have one for left midfielders. It is mostly the defensive and central midfielders who play. And here is where we meet Kamara, who played in the January game. It's Agüibo Kamara, who we had as a likely candidate, and he was selected for the squad. So he's well coded as a left midfielder because he does always seem to play on the left, as he did against Nigeria there. He is the only candidate, though, among the left and right midfielders that we had on the list. So we move upfield onto the left upper quadrant of the field. That covers left wingers, left attacking midfielders, and left forwards. And we were very thin for Guinea here. We had no definite or likely candidates. We only had a possible candidate, and that was Yadali Diaby, and he was only selected for the preliminary squad. So we're probably going to see out of position players here, probably the forwards filling in. Over to the right side, it's also very thin, just two candidates at the possible level here. And the first one is Bafode Dansoko. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad. The other one was selected, but only for the preliminary squad, Thierno Barry. So he is not on the squad. So effectively, we have no players coded as left attacking midfielder or right attacking midfielder, and we're not going to check it now because we're going to introduce some of the forward players because they would be the ones playing in the position. So let's go on to attacking midfielders. Here too, no definite or likely candidates, just two possible candidates, Francois Camino and Karim Cissé. The two candidates, a possible but unlikely candidate in Morley Silla, and seemingly off the squad, Ibrahima Conte. So the possible candidate, Francois Camino, was selected for the final squad, but Morley Silla, the sorry, I'm missing someone here. Kareem Cisse, the other possible candidate, also selected. The possible but unlikely candidate, Maurice Hill, at least did make it to the preliminary squad, but not the final squad, and Ibrahima Conte not selected even for the preliminary squad. Holy smokes, so we only have really two attacking midfielders to speak of here, and I think I'm going to go on to forwards, introduce the forwards, and then we'll look back at those positions because these names are going to show up. So for forwards, we had a definite candidate in Serhou Guirassy, a likely candidate in Morgan Guilavogui, and then two possible candidates in Mohamed Bayo and Jose Conte. We also had a seemingly off the squad Sori Kaba. I'm not really sure why we put him on the list. To be honest, we probably had a reason in part one, which is now lost in the mists of time. Anyway, going back to our definite forward, we have Serhou Guirassy selected for the squad. This will be his first tournament. Morgan Guilavogui, our likely candidate, also selected. So too the two possible candidates, Mohamed Bayo and Jose Conte, both of those selected. So even with these four forwards, the attacking part of the team seems a little bit thin. Sori Kaba, who was seemingly off the squad, did not make the squad. But we do actually have two new names, and one of them made it. So the first one is Ousmane Camara, but he only made the preliminary squad. The player who made it was Facinet Conte, just 19 years old, but new to the squad and selected for the final squad. So there's one more name for them to choose from. Now I think it's time to go back and look at who made up the forward line. So again, it's a 4-3-3 formation in the first game. We have our definite forward Guirassy playing as a centre forward, Guilavogui playing as the right attacking forward, and Camara, who we met as a left midfield, making up the numbers by playing the left attacking midfield. So kind of moving up or advancing forward. In the second game, the 4-2-3-1, we have four forwards to deal with, and we have Francois Camino playing on the left. We saw him there quite a bit in the build up to the tournament, so we kind of expected him to be there. We have, as we said earlier, central midfielder Ilak Mariba playing as a central attacking midfielder here, and flanking him on the right side is once again the left midfielder Aguibu Camara, so he's getting quite a bit of game time here. The centre forward this time is Mohamed Bayo, our possible candidate at the forward position. And then in the game against Nigeria, we have a three-man forward line. It's Guirassy up front, Camano on the left, and Guilavogui on the right. And I personally think that that's what we'll see in the first game of the Cup. But that brings us to the end of part two. Those are the candidates. And we move to the section 3. So we begin with kind of a summary of the surprises. And firstly, notable non-selections. Okay, let's go with Dembo Silla, the right back, who we had as a likely candidate. He only made it as far as the preliminary squad. We also have Ibrahima Cisse, and I don't know why I'm putting him on, maybe because he was a starter in the 2021 African Cup. Well, we have two starters that weren't selected. Defensive midfielder Ibrahima Cisse Ibrahim Cisse, and also Ibrahim Conte the third, who was a starter in 2021 African Cup, but neither of those making it. In fact, Conte didn't even make the preliminary squad in this one. Okay, moving on to surprise inclusions. None really. We just have the new player who we'll put in the next section. That's the only kind of unexpected player. And so we do go down to new players and put Facinet Conte, the young forward, in that category. But as I said near the beginning, we do have a lot to update on injuries, a lot of them that we mentioned in part one. So let's move fast. It was two players we have as having recovered from their injury. So Mukhtar Diakabi, the central defender, he had a lower leg fracture from October, so we definitely didn't expect to see him actually, but he was fit to play for his club in December, so it must have been a fairly mild fracture, and he was also fit for the pre-tournament friendly and chosen for the squad, so seems to have recovered there. It's possible that he's still building fitness, or he's been brought to the tournament in hopes of recovery, but as far as we know, he is recovered. Next, we have Ibrahim Diakate. He's a right defender, and he missed the last two games in November there because of his injury. Also not selected for the pre-tournament friendly, so we suspected injury, but when we looked into it, we found it was a false alarm and there is no sign of injury. So it's a bit weird that he was not selected for any of the last three games and yet named to the final squad. But that's right back Ibrahim Diakite, who we put in the recovered from injury category. Players who were selected for the final squad but who are still injury doubts. Isiaga Silla, the left back, Isiaga Silla, his calf injury lasted from early November right up until the end of the season and even for the pre-tournament friendly, but he was nevertheless selected for the final squad. So a bit of a surprise there, but he may be coming in carrying that injury. We also have Julien Janvier there, who actually did start three of the games, all three games. So let's see what we wrote here. He was out with an unknown injury for 4 of his 5 club games prior to the end of the season in December. Oddly, though, he was fit for the November internationals and also for the pre-tournament friendly. So this injury doesn't appear on his international record. And in fact, he played 90 minutes in each of those games. So it's just that unknown injury at the end of the season for his club that confused us a little bit there, but he was named to the final squad and actually played in the pre-tournament friendly, so we're presuming he's okay, but we will put him as an injury doubt. Naby Keita, the captain of the team, also maybe coming in as an injury doubt. He was out with a muscle injury in October and November, and then he was out with influenza for the last game in November. He recovered enough to be on the bench for 3 club games, but then for the last game of the season, he was out with illness. So 3 separate issues there. But he was healthy for the pre-tournament friendly, and he was on the bench for that game. But because he hasn't played, Naby Keita hasn't played a game since October 7th, we think he might be a fitness issue here. So wouldn't be surprised to see him not start game 1 and then build his fitness through training or maybe a substitute appearance. Okay, well, that is actually it. We don't actually have any players, despite all the ones we mentioned in part 1, any players that would drop due to their injury. And we've finished that section. So we're going to move on to our spotlight review, the players who we think are going to be starters. And we have the list that we made at the end of part 1. So what say we retitle this our revised spotlight review, and we'll go over it. Well, we're going to stick with what we got with manager Diawara Kaba. We don't think that's going to change shortly before the Cup. Goalkeeper Ibrahim Kone, we're very definite on him. Probably one of the most certain picks on the squad, so almost always starts for them and did so the last 3 games. So no change there. We think he's a definite starter. Mukhtar Diakabi, we are going to... Okay, so what we had here in central defense was no kind of character we would play. We were confident would start, but we had Mukhtar Diakabe and Seydou Sow highlighted in blue as our probable, maybe the probable starters. But we do change that. We now think Mukhtar Diakabe, we want to take him off the list. We don't really, we've lost a bit of faith that he'll be the starter. And we've gained faith actually in Julien Janvier. And we'll still stick with Seydou Sow as a likely starter, but in fact, we now have more faith in Julien Janvier, who started all 3. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Janvier starting alongside Sow there. We're going to actually look at the first game of the Cup because we can, and see who actually started. So we'll test out our predictions. And honestly, before I'm making the revised predictions, I don't know. So I'm not I'm not faking it here, as you'll probably see, because I'll be wrong all over the place. But goalkeeper, no surprise, it really was Ibrahim Kone. So I don't get a lot of plaudits for that because it was pretty obvious. Here too, then we have Janvier and So as our probable starters, and I see it is a 2-man central defense, and it is Janvier. So we were right, putting our biggest confidence in him. But actually, we were wrong to take the mark off Mukhtar Diakabi because he did start. But I would say at this point it's a bit of a surprise that he started, because he didn't start so much in the 3 games prior to the tournament. And Seydou Sow on the bench there, so not a starter. But we had him as a likely, we didn't put our full faith behind him. Okay, let's go to left back. Well, that injury news on Isiaga Silla throws a bit of doubt in our mind. I'll just remind you that we said he was injured right up until the pre-tournament friendly, but selected for the final squad. But we think he might be coming in injured. And the other player there, Sekou Silla, played all 3 games in the lead up to the Cup. So we're going to change our decision, which was a definite in Isiaga Silla, and we're going to put both of them on there, Sekou Silla, Isiaga Silla, and we even favor Sekou Silla here. Let's see how we did. Yeah, I'm wondering if Isiaga Silla is still carrying an injury, because he is not the starter. It's Sekou Silla once again as the starter. So we may see Isiaga Silla later in the tournament. At the right back, we wouldn't say we're 100% confident on Antoine Conte, because he started just 2 of the 3 recent games, but to us he seems the best candidate, and we're going to stick with what we had, which is Antoine Conte in green, kind of confident that he'll be the starter. And when I take a look, we were right to put that confidence there, because he did start the first game. Central midfield, well, we had Amadou Diawara as a definite, and we're going to stick with that. We had Ilek Moriba as a definite. He started a lot of their games, but not so much of the recent games. So we're going to take our confidence off of him. In fact, We're not even sure he'll start. The only start he got over the last three was in the third one as an attacking midfielder. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him on, of course. We're also going to take our confidence off of Naby Keita. I suspect he might be injured or will be brought into the team slowly. However, we are going to up our confidence in Aguibu Camara, but we're going to take him off the central midfield because he's been playing more as an attacking midfield. And so we're going to put him, we'll put him as a left attacking midfielder because he does tend to play on the left, although he didn't in the recent games. But we're almost certain, given what we saw in the last three games, that he will be a starter, even if he does move around. But on the left wing, we also have Francois Camano. We had him in blue as a likely starter, and we'll stick with that because we think he might start on the left, and Aguibu Camara could start somewhere else. Let's take a look and see who is the left attacker. It is Francois Camano. Francois Camano there. So we're not really surprised by that. Oh, did we do the central midfield? I don't think we did. Let's go back and do the central midfielder. We had Amadou Diawara as a definite, and he was not selected. So that actually comes as a surprise. We thought he was for sure. Did we add any names to that list? No, we didn't. Let's see who it is. It is Elek Mariba, so we have taken our confidence off him, but we shouldn't have because he was a starter. But overall, that's not a surprise because he started a lot in the last 2 years, just not so much in the last two games. And maybe our prediction about Naby Keita is right. I'm just going to see if he came on as a substitute. Yes, no, he did not even come on as a substitute, but Isiaga Silla did, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the starting as the left back in the second game. Anyway, I hope I'm not confusing you here. Aguibu Camara, who we've gained confidence in as a starter, actually did start as a central attacking midfielder. So hard to predict where he'll show up, but he does seem to be well entrenched into the squad. And let's go over to the right wing. We had Morgan Guiavogui as or maybe to likely starter. I would say more on the likely side there. And let's take a look and see. He did start as a right attacker, so that was expected, I would say, or we're certainly not surprised by it. And then the forward, they have one forward in this 4-2-3-1 formation. We thought for sure it would be Serhou Guirassy, so we had him in green. And even though he just played 2 of the 3 games, we remain confident that he will be the starter. It could be Bio, but I'm not really going to put him on the list, though he did start one of the games. But he wouldn't be on our list. And well, let's take a look. And well, how hopelessly wrong we are. It is not. It is not Guirassy. It is Bio. So there we go. Well, I guess that gives evidence that I wasn't cheating. Because kind of embarrassed to be so hopelessly wrong. But there we are. That is our spotlight review, and that is it for Guinea. I'm gonna say Mohamed Bio is a mild surprise as a starter there. Okay, that is it. That brings us to the end of our look at part 2 of Guinea, their selections, and we even added in the selections for the first game, which was kind of fun to do, and we'll see going forward. But we are going to revisit Guinea for the 2025 African Cup that comes in December of 2025, so we will see you then. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.